It's this obsession with net zero by 2050. I wonder if we'll be alive then. But regardless, Sheila, what do you make of this?
It's a $1 trillion policy.
With a T.
With a T.
Yeah.
$1 trillion. And the reason they're doing this now is because the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Belém, Brazil, is coming up right away. And so we have Mark Carney. He's the author of Values, which is the Green Manifesto Bible. He made a career at the United Nations post being a globalist bankster on debanking and de-insuring oil and gas projects, and much to the benefit of Brookfield. And so now we're seeing all these initiatives being brought forward, like the small nuclear reactor projects that are coming out of Saskatchewan. They're partnering with Westinghouse. Guess who owns Westinghouse?
Brookfield?
Brookfield. So, it's a $1 trillion project. How much of that is going to go to Brookfield? Every time I see a climate strategy or even like a policy of anything coming out of the federal government, I take whatever it is and then I Google it with Brookfield. Yep. And it's always like 1 degree of separation away from Brookfield. And they're still pursuing this 2050 race to the bottom. I see Tim Hodgson, who is a Minister of Energy. What his hair looks like it's made in a Lego factory. Anyway, Tim Hodgson says there's a global race to net zero by 2050. Where? Where's the race to 2050? Who's racing us? The Chinese? No. The Americans most definitely not. The Russians, they don't care.
India,
exactly. Like nobody's racing to net zero. Anyways, he says there's a global race to net zero by 2050. It's time for Canada to compete. Can you imagine how bad it's going to get when we try to compete on getting to net zero? Climate Competitiveness Strategy will ensure we meet the world's growing demand for this is crazy. There's no demand for low carbon energy around the world while keeping our environment clean and our economy sustainable. There's no demand for low carbon energy. There's demand for energy.
Yeah.
And that energy is carbon based. It's liquefied natural gas, which we have a ton of. It's oil, which we have a ton of. It's coal. We have a ton of. Just let us sell it and use it. Nobody is demanding solar panels in the developing world. They want to be able to cook their food over natural gas or butane as opposed to animal dung.
Well said, Sheila. And, that is in line with Mark Carney's so-called economic policy. His strategy is to create new markets that are not the U.S. So, okay, I'm all for that. What do we have that the world wants? Energy. But they won't build pipelines. They won't approve energy projects.
Right. And I asked, maybe we can show that even. I asked Scott Moe about this because I was at the Saskatchewan Party AGM over the weekend. And boy, were they glad to see us. I'll tell you a fun little anecdote. So we're sitting there with the other media people. And sometimes I generally don't care to sit with them. I don't need to sit with them. I can work from anywhere. But I thought I would sit with them I don't know them. And I thought my presence would make them uncomfortable. You know what I mean? And so I sat there and the people leaving the AGM or like going to use the washroom at the AGM had to go down the stairs past where we were sitting. And there was like a railing there. And every time they noticed myself or Lise, they'd be like, "Oh, Rebel News, thanks so much for being here. We love you guys." And then they'd say, "You know what the real problem is? The mainstream media." And they're like 18 inches from the mainstream media when they're yelling that stuff at us. And I thought, I picked the perfect spot. So these people have to listen to this all day. But I did ask Scott Moe about, do you actually think pipelines are going to get built? Because as it turns out, that Office of Major Projects, that was what C5, Bill C5 was passed to create this Office of Major Projects, and we're going to fast track things that are in the nation's interest. And that means things that Mark Carney's hand-selected cronies decide are in the nation's interest. And he selected Dawn Farrell to be the CEO. She's the lady from TransAlta Utilities that colluded with the NDP to get us off coal early in Alberta. And guess what? Now we have rolling brownouts when it gets cold and or hot.
Unbelievable.
So
An energy powerhouse of Alberta has rolling brownouts.
Right, exactly. And that's who he put in charge. So how do you think C5 is going to go? So an order paper question came back last week, and it was like, what's the status of the Office of Major Projects since Dawn Farrell took her position in June? So June, July, August, September, October, November, we're 6 months in. What have they done in 6 months? It's got a $20 million annual budget, okay? There's Dawn Farrell and one staff, her assistant. They don't even have an office space. They don't have an office space. It's out of Calgary. 30% of the commercial real estate there is empty because of capital flight, because of the oil patch. And so I put that question to him. I'm like, the Office of Major Projects doesn't even have an office. We've seen the budget. Gonna get a pipeline? He danced around it because he's not like Danielle Smith. He could stand to be a little bit more like Danielle Smith. And I know you guys watch us. I heard that over the weekend. Take this criticism to heart. Be a little bolder.
You talked about Prime Minister Carney being a different boss in charge. But after seeing that budget and seeing that there's still that zombie industrial carbon tax in there, and knowing that the Office of Major Projects has one staff and no office, are you even remotely confident that we will get a pipeline built with Carney in the Prime Minister's office?
I am hopeful at this point that we not only would be able to get a pipeline built, but a number of other pieces of infrastructure as well. You quite rightfully have operationally, pointed out that there's going to have to be some more resources put into that space. Bill C5 is a stopgap to legislate through what is essentially an unworkable regulatory environment. And so there is going to have to be some resources if that is going to have any success in any way, in particular when it comes to a significant project like a pipeline. I commend Premier Smith for stepping forward and being the proponent in the early days for that project. If there are a couple other to quote Premier Smith, bad laws that are removed, I think you'll see the private sector move into that space sooner rather than later. But if we truly want to become, and I'll use the Prime Minister Carney's words, an energy superpower and have the strongest economy in the G7 nation, it means we have to open up, and I'll say this because I say this to him, we need to open up runway and opportunities for all of our industries, which include the oil and gas industry, to not only maintain their current production, but to expand that production. If we are truly going to be serious about being that economic superpower and balancing our federal budget, all industries are going to need that opportunity to move forward. And we should be proud of that as Canadians, as I always say, because, if you're concerned about the sustainability of how we produce things, ours is the best in the world. And so the world should buy more of it, and we should make more available. So I do have concerns operationally. Just back to the budget in particular on the industrial carbon tax. And I did see those statements that they're going to continue to move forward with an industrial carbon tax. This is a conversation where I won't speak for Alberta, but I'll speak for Saskatchewan, where we have been working with not only Prime Minister Carney, but a number of his ministers to see if it is possible for us to chart a path forward that is going to work for the industries that are investing and provide certainty, the desperately needed certainty in our province, and see if we can come to an agreement on what will work in that space. I'm not entirely convinced we will, but we are going to try.
He's going to try. There's a lot to tell me that he's going to try. And I was like, can you just, you could have said, I'm not confident, but I'm going to fight like hell. To be like, you know what I mean? Why? Like, why? It's very political. I wasn't pleased with that.
Sheila, to play devil's advocate here, what can Premier Moe tangibly do?
Well, I mean, he could join Danielle Smith in proposing a project of his own. Mm-hmm. In 6 months, this Office of Major Projects has done nothing. Danielle Smith was able to put together a proposal before the Office of Major Projects could even get an office together. Mm. What's Saskatchewan doing to call their bluff? Something? Anything?
And again, to go back to Mark Carney's rhetoric about developing new markets, of Canada being less reliant, I always go back, and forgive me if I sound like a broken record here, but it was a day in April of this year when Lincoln Jay and I went out to New Brunswick, and Pierre Poilievre had a presser literally in the port of St. John, New Brunswick. I think it might be the second biggest port in Canada. And, the lost opportunity that Mr. Poilievre spoke of, Sheila, that this would have been the final destination for the Energy East pipeline.
Yep.
1.2 million barrels of oil per day coming into the port. And guess where it was going? Not to the US, it was going across the Atlantic to Europe. New markets. And so think about that, Sheila, developing the oil and gas sector, building pipelines, which are well-paying, great jobs. Over the course of this project, billions and billions of dollars of revenue from markets that are not US-based. And the answer is no. What did Blackface say? There's no business case? Give me a break.
Yeah, I could, 10 minutes up the road, I could tell you where the Northern Gateway pipeline would have been. And that would have been our export pipeline off the north of British Columbia. And even if we were ever to get that pipeline built, it still faces a tanker ban. Just on Canadian tankers, right? Because Alaskan tankers can come straight down through the same strait, but just on Canadians. And we're supposed to say, oh, this isn't specifically about Alberta oil and gas? Sure seems that way.